All right, let's get into it. Today, we're diving into a problem that, let's be honest, pretty much every single company using the cloud runs into. How do you split the bill for all those shared services? It's one of those things that can cause some serious tension between teams. But, and this is the key, if you get it right, you can transform your cloud budget from a source of conflict into a powerful tool for making way smarter business decisions.
Okay, let me ask you something. Does your monthly cloud bill ever feel like just this giant, mysterious number? Like you see the grand total, but the second you try to figure out which team or which product is responsible for what, it just all goes fuzzy. Yeah, if that hits a little too close to home, stick around, you're definitely in the right place. So first things first, let's really nail down what we're talking about here. The shared bill problem. And look, this is way more than just some headache for the finance department. When you have zero visibility into who's spending what, it sends these negative ripples through the entire organization. See, when you just kind of ignore these shared costs, things really start to fall apart. Your central platform teams, they might end up underfunded because nobody can see the value they're providing. Then you've got product teams who might, start gaming the system a bit, using up shared resources because, hey, it's not coming out of their budget. And that leads to some really bad architectural decisions. But the worst part, it completely erodes any trust in the FinOps data you're trying to use to make smart choices. Okay, so here's the real kicker. This is the heart of the problem. You've got your central platform teams, right? The folks running Kubernetes or your monitoring tools, they're the ones whose name is on the bill from AWS or Google Cloud. But it's the product engineering teams who are actually using all that stuff. They're driving the consumption. Every decision they make has a direct impact on that bill, but they never really feel the financial sting. There's a total disconnect. Okay, so we've laid out the problem pretty clearly. Now for the good part. Let's talk solutions. The good news is we're not starting from scratch here. There are some really solid established models for this. We're going to walk through 4 super practical ways you can split that shared bill and finally get some clarity on your costs. But first, when we say shared costs, what are we actually talking about? Let's make this tangible. Think of these as the workhorses of any modern tech company. Things like shared Kubernetes clusters that run basically everyone's applications, or a centralized logging platform that's just slurping up data from dozens of services. And of course, you've got your CI/CD pipelines, your networking hubs, and all those security and identity tools that absolutely everyone depends on. All right, this table really breaks it all down, showing the trade-offs for the 4 main ways to do this. So first up is direct usage. This is the gold standard for precision. You're measuring exactly what each team used, but it's also the most complex to set up. Then there's proportional. This is a great place to start. You basically split the bill based on some ratio everyone agrees on. A flat fee? Well, it's the simplest, right? Everyone pays a set subscription. The downside is it doesn't really encourage anyone to be efficient. And then you have the hybrid model, which honestly is what most people end up with in the real world. It's usually a mix of a flat fee for the basic platform and then usage-based costs for what you actually consume on top of that. Okay, so let's say you've picked a model. Now what? How do you actually make this thing work? This isn't some kind of magic trick. It's all about using the tools and features that your cloud provider already gives you to turn this theory into something real. So, what's in your toolkit? There are really 3 key things. First, you've got tagging, or if you're in the Google Cloud or Kubernetes world, you call it labeling. This is your absolute foundation. Second, you need a really smart account structure, one that lets you isolate costs by project or team. And third, and this is huge for Kubernetes, is using resource metadata. We're talking about things like namespaces to link a specific workload directly back to the team that owns it. No more guessing. All right, theory is one thing, but let's make this super concrete. Just imagine you're running a shared Kubernetes platform, and it's being used by, say, 3 different product teams. How in the world do you split that bill fairly? Here's how you'd actually do it. It's a pretty logical process. Step 1. You go in and you measure the CPU and memory that each team's namespace is consuming, and you allocate the core cluster costs based on that. Step 2, you look over at your centralized logging service and you divide those costs based on the sheer volume of logs each team is sending its way. And then step 3, and you cannot skip this, it's absolutely critical. You present all that data back to the teams in a report that's actually clear and easy to understand. So once you've got this ability to allocate costs, you come to a fork in the road. It's a big strategic choice. Are you just going to show the teams what they're spending to raise awareness? Or are you going to actually charge them for it, by moving money between departments? And that right there is the fundamental difference between what we call showback and chargeback. Showback is all about one thing, visibility. That's it. The whole goal is to build trust and just make engineers aware of the financial impact of their decisions. It's way lower friction to implement, and honestly, it's a fantastic place for most organizations to start. Chargeback, on the other hand, is all about enforcement. Here, you're literally transferring funds from one department's budget to another. This creates some incredibly powerful financial incentives for teams to get efficient. But it's a lot more complex, and what you usually see is that organizations will start with showback, and then, as their FinOps practice gets more mature, they'll evolve into chargeback. Okay, let's start to wrap this up with what might be the most important part of this whole thing, the rules for actually making this succeed in your organization. Look, knowing the models is great, but avoiding the common pitfalls, that's what's really going to make or break your efforts. You absolutely have to avoid these common traps. First, don't just lump shared costs into a bucket called overhead. That's just hiding the problem. Also, don't try to over-engineer this and build the perfect 100% accurate model right out of the gate. Remember, tags are your friend. They're super helpful, but they are not a silver bullet. They're not the only part of the solution. And this is maybe the most important one. Never, ever use this data to punish teams. And always, always take the time to explain to people how the whole model works. You know, if you only remember one thing from all of this, please let it be this. Transparency matters way, way more than precision. When you're starting out, your goal isn't perfect accounting. Your goal is to build a shared understanding and to build trust. Think about it. A model that's maybe 80% accurate, but that everyone understands and trusts, is infinitely more valuable than some 99% accurate model that's a total black box nobody believes in. And that really brings us to the end of our journey here. We've looked at the problem, we've walked through the different models, and we've even covered the practical steps to get started. So really, the only question left is the one for you and your team. How are you going to take that first step to crack open that black box and finally bring some transparency to your cloud costs?